Growing up on early YouTube, about 2010s, one of my favorite genres of videos to watch were speed paints. I really love watching someone boot up Paint Tool SAI or MS Paint and just draw to their heart's content with pretty good copyrighted music or sometimes Nightcore playing in the background. Unfortunately, this has seemed to kind of become a lost art, at least in modern YouTube, mostly I think due to copyright laws and also people really preferring to watch videos with voiceovers and stuff like this. So I rarely see anything like that nowadays, but one thing I still see that was around back then are art style challenges. I love seeing people tackle a style that they love from their own perspective, so I think today I'll be doing just that. I'll be drawing my OC Juniper Florist in 5 different art styles that influenced me growing up. So let's get started, shall we? So if you follow me on any of my socials, or you just know me as a person, you probably know that I really love Sailor Moon. If I remember correctly, Sailor Moon was actually one of my very first special interests as a child. I watched the original English dub all the time, and one of my most cherished gifts as a child that I received was a copy of Codename Sailor V that I got from my aunt, that I carried in my backpack for most of 5th grade. The classic Sailor Moon anime is still one of my favorite pieces of media just ever, even if I do have a ton of issues with it now as an adult, and I don't think it aged very well. It may be a bit of a controversial take, but I honestly enjoy the art direction of the anime more than the manga sometimes, so this kind of led to Sailor Moon being an obvious first choice as art style challenge. Juniper here was created in the December of 2017, if my records are correct, so I would have been about 13 years old and have transitioned to being a bit more into Homestuck during that period of my life than Sailor Moon. Still though, I really do think 13-year-old me would be pretty excited to see me making this kind of art. I really loved Sailor Moon, like I said, and I think if I found out that I was able to replicate this style now as an adult, I think I would be really excited. To give a bit more information about Juniper, Juniper is a 21-year-old janitor and also occasional nursery worker at a local botanical shop near their apartment. He struggles pretty heavily with social interaction and just generally being around others, so he spends most of his time off work at home sleeping or with his dog Peony. He is also technically the antagonist of my dream project, a game called Metamorphoses, which I really hope I can make one day. I'm also really interested in making a video about it at some point, so, I'll talk more about that later, but I would love to hear what you guys' thoughts on that would be. I would say the hardest part of this style was the clothes. Initially, I was going to do this video with my OC Calliope from my other videos, and my attempt at her in this style was kind of thwarted by not being able to replicate the way clothing folds are drawn very accurately. So this time I ended up following fewer references, and I followed them much more closely. Luckily, I think I was able to make an outfit that I still think Juniper would actually wear within these constraints. Though, I still have a little bit of gripes with how the whole thing came out in the end. I imagine that within the universe of Sailor Moon, she would be a minor villain who ends up redeemed like the Spectre sisters. For their appearance, I took heavy inspiration from U-Dial of Witches 5 for the hair vents and the style I drew their eyes in, and Fisheye as reference for their little antenna things and the overall hairstyle. Like I said, I am a bit sad that I didn't get a lot of the things super close, especially his hairstyle. I also don't think that it would have fit within the design conventions of Sailor Moon really. Especially the bangs. It's a different kind of anime hairstyle that I don't think would be in Sailor Moon. So here's the final result. Do you think you've been to the show? Please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. This textile was honestly way harder than I expected. Eve is an RPG Maker horror game that was released back in 2012 that has had a grip on me since I was very young. I was so just horribly obsessed with this game as an 8-year-old, and I replay it around once a year. So obviously I feel like I had to try and emulate the art style for this video. As a brief explanation, since this game is a bit more niche, the plot of Eve is that a young girl, named Eve, finds herself trapped in a mysterious art gallery full of paintings that come to life and chase after her. That's really all I really can say without giving any spoilers, since the original game is free online, and I would really highly recommend it. It does have a remake that released on Steam a lot more recently, and does have a bit higher fidelity to the art, but I would still, if you want to try it out, I would still recommend the free version. You can find it online extremely easily. I did specifically want to also mimic the style of the original game and not the remake that released in 2022. I really love the remake, and I think the quality of the art is an amazing improvement, and it helps with the gameplay a lot. But the original game has a wonderful atmosphere that I don't think can fully be achieved nowadays with modern tools. I think you could still achieve it, but I think you'd have to kind of go back in time a little bit to get that effect. I also just have a really strong place in my heart for the original game and the original art. So I just really wanted to do it. And I think I should have known that this would be difficult since I am, using modern tools. I think the original art was made on a small canvas with a default brush and probably Photoshop or a similar program, which is pretty difficult for me to replicate nowadays in Clip Studio Paint, at least with the way I like to draw. I don't like using small canvases anymore. I did when I was younger, and I also really like rough texture brushes, so a default brush is kind of torture. It's also very compressed in most places online, so that it was not easy to find like clean references of the art. So I did actually end up manually compressing the art with JPEG compression and such to make the final product, which I'll show at the end here. I don't think I did amazingly, but I'm still decently happy with how Juniper looks. I decided to take a lot of inspiration from Gary, which I'll talk about in a minute. Like I said, I ended up manually creating the JPEG compression to mimic the way the art looks online. And I did not do any sprite work for this video, but I like to imagine her sprite whenever holding her bag when she walks similarly in a way to Flowery from Deltarune and how he holds his cape. Maybe she'd use it to defend herself from paintings in the gallery or something, like swinging it around. That's kind of what I'm imagining in my head. If they were in the universe of Ebe, I imagine they would be someone who fell into the gallery before the events of the game. Since the cast of Ebe is so well done and very small, that I think adding another character would kind of mess everything up. I think Juniper would kind of be enthralled by everything about the gallery since they're a very creative person, but they would also die fairly early on. My first inclination is either a lady in red or, that blue painting if you have played the game that can trick you and eat your rose. That's kind of what I imagine would have happened. Like I said, I mainly took inspiration from Gary since he's also the main adult with enough art to reference, and I also feel like he has a similar vibe to Juniper, so I thought this works out. As a fun fact about my character, to this day, she's heavily inspired by the character Mary from this game. I've always felt a really strong connection to Mary, so she's influenced actually a lot of my characters at this point. Let me know if you have any tips for how I could have improved this one. I might revisit in the future with like a different outfit or something. I don't know, I'm not really sure. Let me know. Now, at least to me, this next style was honestly a no-brainer for this challenge. Harvest Moon Animal Parade is a farming sim that released on the Nintendo Wii in 2009. And I've been obsessed with it, much like the other things I've mentioned in this video so far, since I was a little kid. And I'd have to say, to let myself be a bit nostalgic, it is my favorite game in just the entire series of Harvest Moon. One of the reasons for this, I think, is the beautiful character designs and the stunning art style that this game has compared to the other games in the series. I do like the other games in the series' art styles, I will say, but Harvest Moon Animal Parade and Harvest Moon Tree of Tranquility were both led by different character designers than the rest of the series. I think Mika Nunokawa's style is absolutely amazing. I had the Animal Parade and Tree of Tranquility strategy guides as a kid, and I would just pore over them to look at the character art and to read everything about the game, really. So I just really wanted to do this style justice. To give a bit more context about Harvest Moon Animal Parade, within the game, you are a farmer who recently came to the island with a small nature sprite called Finn. And you have to help the harvest goddess by ringing 5 bells, I believe it's 5 bells, to rejuvenate the land and make everyone happy again. Everyone on the island is like miserable because the ocean is terrible, the fires aren't working, the crops are all bad. Everything sucks because the bells haven't been rung in so long. So you have to come and you have to fix this. It's pretty fun, and you don't really see a bunch of story in Harvest Moon games, especially lately, I feel. So it's really fun for me as someone who really loves stories in games, regardless of the genre. I think within the universe of Animal Parade, Juniper would be a bit of a shut-in like Chase, who is a cook, who doesn't really leave his house till you ring the red bell that fixes the fires in the island. Or maybe like the wizard or the witch princess, who are just kind of shut-ins in general. I'm not sure if they would be a romance candidate, but if they were, I think their favorite gifts would be a mix of items like the fugue mushroom, which you can find in the fugue forest, or cooked dishes that would be like coffee, maybe an herbal tea. I think maybe they would run like a small library, since I noticed the game does have like a small school on the island, but they don't really have anything like a library, which I thought was really interesting, because Harvest Moon games typically do. Juniper as a character is a big fan of older technology, so I also think they would have had a fun house design-wise, but I doubt their room would look like the one I designed for them in their own universe, given the way the environments in the game are made to be walked around in a bit more. When drawing the art for this style, I mainly used the wizard, Maya, who is a waitress, and Chase to figure out how to adapt their design. I tried to keep her outfit the same as my reference, since I felt like it actually did fit in just fine with the rest of the cast, and drawing this was super fun, but very out of my comfort zone. I would absolutely love to draw the game's protagonist, Ifis Hale, in this style as well, but that's really just for me. It's a really nostalgic style, and looking at my finished result makes me really happy, so I just want to draw more in it at this point. I would say that the most challenging part of the style was using a default textureless brush for my line art. I love adding texture to my art, especially in the line art stage, so it felt a bit disconcerting to go in with such a smooth brush. Absolutely. Overall, though, I honestly think this is one of the best ones so far. I initially, when I finished this art, I was actually a tad disappointed in myself that I didn't really get every last detail perfect, but now after a few days, I think I'm actually very happy with the end result. What do you all think? And do I have any fellow Harvest Moon fans in my audience? Please let me know. I'm obsessed with these games still to this day. As we near the end of the challenge, I was a bit torn on what the last two art styles should be. Through the last three I had picked, I'd established a bit of a theme of choosing styles that inspired me growing up, so I didn't really fully know what to keep choosing because I didn't actually have a ton of media that did that for me artistically as a kid. A lot of the media I consumed as, a child who grew up autistic didn't really get to the level of things like Sailor Moon because I kind of had blinders on for most of my life. Eventually, though, the perfect style did come to mind. I first saw Ponyo when I was in elementary school, and as far as I can really recall, I loved it. I loved it so much. And it was one of my favorite movies for a super long time. I really liked it to the point that it took me a super long time to ever watch another Ghibli movie. Because every time I had the opportunity to watch a Ghibli movie, I just wanted to watch Ponyo again. Honestly, I would still call it my favorite Ghibli movie because I have some really fond memories of my brothers when I showed it to them. So Ghibli's influence on my art style also just didn't fully hit until I was in early high school. And even then, I think it was pretty subtle. The expressiveness of the characters is something I deeply admire to this day, and I recently purchased a book all about architecture and Ghibli movies so I could study it. So the art direction, I still think to this day is amazing, and I think still has some influence on my work. I love the way every part of the characters actually emotes, not just their face. Obvious examples would be like the thick, runny tears, or the way the hair puffs up when they get angry and such. So I ended up electing to do the Ghibli style for this portion of the video. Specifically, like I said, I did take a lot of influence from Ponyo, which I feel like you can probably tell. Most of my reference images were from that movie, just because it was my favorite growing up. I tried to imagine Juniper as like a side character within one of these kind of stories, and came around to the idea of them being sort of an eccentric entomologist who really loves to paint the bugs that they capture and care for. While Juniper is canonically a college dropout, I think in a universe where they did finish university, they would either be an English major with a focus on creative writing or some kind of biology major with a focus on plants or insects. When it came to drawing in this style, I did try to focus on rounding out my shapes and keeping my lines and colors pretty simple for the sake of animation. I tried to take away excess details through the inking phase. I just tried to, round everything out. While I adore detail in character design, Ghibli's designs thrive a lot through simplicity. I think the design I created in the end would fit into more of a fantastical movie within their repertoire, but I also really like it. I think, like I said, it's obvious I use Ponyo as a reference and not something like when Martin was there, right? This one isn't my strongest, in my opinion, but I do still find it just really delightful. I don't mind I talk so much about my personal connection during the speed paint, and if you'd like, feel free to share yours. I know a lot of people have really fond feelings for these movies, and I really love hearing what people have to say about art that I enjoy. For pretty much the entire planning stage of this challenge, I resisted the urge to mimic the art style of Tales of Symphonia. For those of you who don't know, which I suspect will be most of you, Tales of Symphonia was the first 3D entry in the Tales series of JRPGs by Bandai Namco. It came out in 2003. It is my favorite game just ever made, ever. Is it that good, you might ask, to still be called my favorite game after 21 years of being alive? Absolutely not. No, it's not. But the story is just so deeply meaningful to me that I don't think it'll be topped for just a very long time. The specific style I'm mimicking here is the style of the concept art by Kosuke Fujishima. While I think the official art is really quite nice, I think the rougher quality to these concept illustrations is much more enticing to me personally. While I wouldn't say that the art style of Tales of Symphonia was necessarily inspirational for me, I think the impact the game and its characters had on my life is enough for me to include it in this video. I actually first played Tales of Symphonia when I was in early elementary school. My uncle would let me play as Colette and then secretly put her on auto, which was a feature in the game, so that he didn't lose every battle because I was not good at it. I won't say bad at video games until about 3 or 4 years ago, to be honest. And So I also played the sequel a lot as a kid, but I barely remember the sequel. I just remember that wasn't good. It wasn't that good. I talked in the last section about how media I consumed rarely got to the level of Sailor Moon in my mind, but I can confidently say that Tales Symphonia did. It's always been up there since I was young. If you have a spare $20 and you will play a 60-hour JRPG about Catholic guilt and the power of friendship, check it out on Steam. It did get a remaster pretty recently. I would still recommend the Steam version if you just want to play it on a computer. It's really good in my opinion, but also it's not really good. It's complicated. If you like dungeons, I think you'll like it. I don't like dungeons. I don't like puzzles. So I have gripes. To talk about my experience with the style now, I decided to use a pencil brush for the line art since I'm pretty sure the art I was referencing was made with a pencil and some kind of alcohol markers. I probably should have used a harder pencil brush, but I really like this soft one. It's called the Perfect Pencil with Tilt on the Clip Studio Asset Store. I recommend it. I really like using it for sketching when I feel like using a pencil brush. As for the coloring, I used a marker brush pack by Acid Key Lime on VGen. I really liked it, and I think I want to incorporate the brushes into more of my art from now on because the texture is amazing, and I really like how they felt to draw with. I tried to replicate that streaky feeling coloring I could see in my references, but I'm not sure how accurately I did it, but I still greatly enjoyed the effect I created, so I really don't mind too much. To talk about Juniper for a moment, I think within the universe they would be a half-elf magic swordsman, but they would not use a sword, they would use like a giant scythe. And they would serve as a graveyard keeper in a small graveyard near the town of probably like Lewin, that area, if you've played the game. You know what I'm talking about? The reason I actually chose this was because up until a year ago, Juniper had a very large death and rot motif within their story and their character. So I thought doing something like that actually really suits them and also fits a bit more into the world. If any of you actually like the Tales series, also feel free to let me know. I know I'm asking a lot of questions in this video, but I like to just hear what kind of media people like, and I also rarely really see people who like the Tales of series, so I would just love to hear about it. Surprise! Secret 6 style! I thought it would be fun to finish off this video by trying to apply the techniques that I enjoyed from the different styles I tried onto my own art. I wouldn't necessarily call this a super accurate depiction of my own work, but I do think it came out pretty nice in the end. I sort of just kind of drew intuitively. I didn't really reference anything from my own art to make this quote-unquote accurate to my style, but I still like how it came out. The main inspirations that I did take in my process were the effects I applied to the Sailor Moon style, the detail work of the Animal Parade style, and the brushes that I used for the Tales Symphonia style, and also that pose idea I mentioned for the sprite in the Eve section I ended up using for this pose for this one. I actually have not done a pretty rendered piece like this in a minute, so I had a lot of fun. And to finish out this video, I think I would really like to talk about Juniper for a minute. I've alluded to a lot of different lore snippets throughout these campaigns, so let me give you a little rundown. Juniper Florist, as mentioned previously, is a character I created back when I was 13 years old for a roleplay server a friend had invited me to. The server actually lasted for about a year and a half, maybe 2, and was a very important part of my life for that period and beyond. I ended up asking the people in the server I could repurpose a few of their characters for a project I'd been working on for almost 8 years now, like 8 years as of today, and I called it Metamorphoses. That story will hopefully become a game someday, but for now, I have been revamping it from the ground up. Juniper is the game's antagonist, but I would not consider them the game's villain, really. He's a character very close to my heart, so I don't think I would ever have the heart to make him villainous. Plus, I just don't really think it would fit his character. But you know, what is his character? Like I alluded to in the Animal Parade section, Juniper is really a recluse. After a series of traumatic events in her life, she's kind of decided that living in the real world just isn't worth it. When she isn't at work or caring for her dog Peony, Juniper spends her time asleep. Due to a lot of irrelevant to this video lore, Juniper is able to go to a special plane of reality when asleep known as the dreamscape. So to escape from the world and all its troubles, she sleeps her life away, really. I've been considering making a video going over my complete revamp of the story, actually, so let me know if any of you would be interested in that. I think it'll be a really good motivator to really finish things out, and I know I've only really made OC content on this channel so far, and I do intend to branch out, but I really just can't help myself. I really love my OCs. So that was my take on the 5 art style challenge. I know people usually do 10 styles for this kind of thing, but I wanted to have room to talk a bit more at length about each style, and I also really wanted to try and get this video out before I started back at university. So if you guys do want to see me hit that 10 art style milestone, let me know, please. And I could tackle 5 more art styles with my OC Ifis, who's the protagonist of the game, perhaps. Instead of focusing on styles that inspired me growing up, though, I think I would focus on styles that inspire me now and a lot more modern stuff. So let me know in the comments if you guys would be interested in seeing that. I hope you all really enjoyed the video, and I do hope to see you guys again soon. Don't be a stranger. Bye!